Hello, good morning. Can you all sit down so we can start the session? Yes. And also, if you can get a bit closer, because if not, it looks a bit empty, the space. So don't be shy. So we will start with our next panel. My name is Miguel Campo. I work in the European Union, and I am the father of the ICR facility. I'm the one who created this 7 years ago, and a proud father of the creature. I think it's an excellent tool from which most of you have benefited, and I think we've done really interesting things throughout the different African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. And I will be today the moderator on the panel on industrial policies. And I would like to call to the stage the panelists that will be joining us in this. If you give me a second. Oh, yes, here it is. Sorry, the panelists that will be joining us today to discuss how can we more effectively integrate the gender component in industrial policies. So I will start by asking Mrs. Ikonse, Deputy Director for the Industry Ministry of Commerce on the Kingdom of Eswatini. Mrs. Ikonse, please, if you can join us on the stage. Then I would like to ask Ms. Sankoloba, Chairperson of the OACPS Business Forum and representative of the Botswana Exporters and Manufacturers Association. I would also like to ask Mr. Bala, Director of Industrial Development from the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment of Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. Bala. And finally, I would like to ask Mr. Levy, Head of Economy and Entrepreneurship Department of the General Confederation of Enterprises of Côte d'Ivoire. Please, if you can join us. Thank you. So thank you all for being here with us, and let's try to see if we can make a dynamic and interesting session. I would ask you please to take notes from the very beginning, because we will have some time at the end for Q&A, and we would like to have an interesting discussion, be able to answer your questions, and have a interesting and fruitful conversation. I would also like to highlight, as Stephen was saying before, that panels are always a very interesting format to share experiences, but we think that it's even more important to then reconnect with our panelists throughout the different social activities that we have, to engage further with them, exchange experiences, and learn from each other. So without further ado, I'll start maybe introducing a bit the theme that we're going to be discussing today. No? And like most themes that are related with gender, I think putting some numbers, that it's a common thing to do, but I think it's necessary, because if not, we talk about gender like a title, like a number, like something that is there that we use on a regular basis. But when we start putting numbers, we realize the magnitude of the problem. No? So we have globally right now 2.7 billion with B women that cannot access labor markets in equal terms as men. 1/3 of the countries in the world have laws that constrains women access to decent jobs in same conditions as men. And 43 economies have laws that do not fight work harassment. And as it was said before, if women were to participate on equal terms of men, GDP worldwide would grow 26%. So if we look at these three numbers, we can see that, of course, it is one of the biggest challenges we have right now. And it's a challenge that has a magnitude that requires working from many different angles. Why? Because the reasons why this disparity is there is not only because women are or not considered in certain policies. It also has to do with the fact that there are social norms, as it was said in the first panel. There's harassment in the workplace. There's lack to access to higher education, especially STEAM education. There are a number of elements that need to be looked at. And only by looking at them from a holistic point of view can we really try to tackle the issue. And this is important because we have to acknowledge that what we're going to be discussing today, gender policies in industrial policies, is only one leg of the table. We need to work with all policies at the same time, and we need to make sure that different departments of a government work together. But I would go even beyond that. We also need to make sure that this is something that is part of the thinking of a country. It cannot be a simple position from one specific government. It has to be something that has continuation over time, because making these changes requires time. It requires efforts both from private and public actors. And that is very important. And we know this very well in the European Union. Women started participating in industrial jobs. Yeah, thank you. Already in late 1800s, but not until 1970s, we started creating laws that would try to promote equal participation. So it took us around a bit less than 100 years to start working on those laws. But even putting those laws in places, as we did, has not achieved the results that one would have expected. Of course, we like to see ourselves in Europe as a continent that has made a lot of progress. And indeed we have. But if you look at the numbers, we're still very far away from what we would like to be, or where we would like to be. So for example, in Germany, only 25% of workforce in manufacturing is women. Only 17% of senior management in manufacturers are women. 17. Only 35% of people who study STEAM in Europe are women. What does this mean? It means that after decades, we still have a lot of work to do. And that means also that all of us who are here, we need to see this with a long-term perspective. We need to work on actual policies right now, but we also need to look at how we create a change over time, building alliances between the different actors. And this brings me to my first question to the panel, which is, we know that both private and public actors have the capacity to influence and to promote this kind of policies. And I would like to start asking our two representatives from the private sector, Mr. Levy and Mrs. Sankalova, a bit on what is their experiences on how private sector can play a role in trying to bring women, and if, from your perspective, this role is being successful, and how can you contribute to engaging with those who do policies, which are governments? How can you contribute to make this happen? So we'll start with Mrs. Ankolova, and then maybe I can give the floor to Mr. Levy.
Thank you very much. A very good morning to you all. As rightfully introduced, my name is Mantla Sankoloba from Botswana. I represent the OECPS Business Forum, as well as the Botswana Exporters and Manufacturers Association. And of course, our biggest mandate of focus is in private sector development to ensure that the private sector succeeds, especially now that we are talking about women. I think when we talk about women at this point, it's a different dispensation altogether. We are talking about women who have been through a lot, especially with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic effects. It's not business as usual. I think the discussions that we would have today are most definitely different from what we would have discussed about 4 years ago. It has become harder for women. And of course, for the private sector associations and chamber of commerces like ourselves, our biggest mandate is to ensure that there is enough advocacy, especially on challenges that women face in doing business. I think the number speaks for themselves, as you have alluded to what is happening in Germany in the manufacturing sector. Only 25% of that is women, which is not okay. And I think it's better than many other African countries, especially where I come from. We would have at least about 6% of women be in the manufacturing sector. And what we do as the private sector is to sensitize the government, especially where there isn't enough representation of women in policy-making decisions. I think politically, we may be aware that in the African landscape, we don't have many of women leaders sitting on policy making decision tables. Therefore, for us, from the advocacy side of things, we have to sensitize governments on their behalf, of course, on the challenges that they face, on the opportunities that are there for them, because sometimes we take it for granted that policymakers are aware of the opportunities that are there for women. And what they need to do perhaps is just to facilitate them, to ensure that they have adequate funding for projects that are already there. You know, opportunities are lying around for women. I'll give you an example of what we have come up with as the private sector in Botswana. We have advocated for introduction of instruments, statutory instruments, one of them being in a sector that is highly condensed with women. There's higher number of women, which is the textile industry. I think it's common around especially the African landscape, where we have big number of women in the textile industry. So what we have done in Botswana was that, let us introduce an instrument that will make it better for women to effectively participate in this particular opportunity. And one of the things that we introduced was a ban. I know countries around us are not very excited about it, but it was very important to take a radical decision as a country to say, you know what, we are aware that this is a sector that empowers women or has the potential to empower women, but they don't have access to markets. And I think this is something that we also need to really take seriously when it comes to women, because when you talk about access to markets, it also has this physical movements, which also touches the non-tariff barriers that women would experience compared to men. And of course, there was an issue on harassment that was shared earlier. It also goes all the way to the trading itself. Like when you cross the borders, sometimes you are forced to stay at the borders for longer hours, even to the later nights, but you are now not safe. You are a woman, you are not safe. A man, at least you can fight for yourself, but as a woman, of course we can fight sometimes, but we really don't have to fight as long as there's policies that can address such non-tariff barriers that women face. So I think the biggest part that we can play as advocacy bodies in the private sector is to ensure that women's voice are heard on issues that they face, on challenges that they face, and also on opportunities that they have, so that proper facilitation can be provided to them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I couldn't, I couldn't agree with you more. And when you were talking about how it's important to have women on leadership positions, it's important from many angles. It's important because has been proven that they have more capacity to influence policies, which is something that, but it's also because it makes teams more productive. And also because, for example, in the case of access to finance, women fund managers have more tendency to lend to women-led businesses. So it's not only a question of symbolically having more women, it has an impact on productivity, has an impact on in efficiency. So indeed, this is a key piece of the puzzle. No? But Mr. Levy, please, if you can also share a bit with us your experience.
Bien sûr. Déjà, je tiens à remercier notre modérateur de ce jour, parce que lorsqu'on préparait justement ce panel, une question que je lui ai demandé, ou bien que je lui ai posé, c'était de nous partager l'expérience européenne. Et justement, dans son entrée, il a eu on va dire, à nous donner quelques chiffres sur la situation et comment les choses ont évolué, qui montrent qu'il y a également des challenges qui existent en Europe ou dans d'autres parties du monde, que nous ne sommes pas seuls, on va dire, où il y a des choses à faire. Et je remercie également tout à l'heure la panéliste aussi qui a du Botswana, qui a eu justement à mettre en exergue certaines avancées qu'on a pu noter et des initiatives qu'ils ont eu à mener en termes d'avancement en tant que secteur privé. Chez nous, on va dire que les choses ne sont pas aussi avancées dans les actions, on va dire, palpables qu'on peut remarquer. Déjà, je voudrais rappeler que je suis de la Confédération générale des entreprises de Côte d'Ivoire. nous sommes, on va dire, le principal interlocuteur avec l'État pour les questions du secteur privé. Nous avons en notre sein une vingtaine d'associations de différents secteurs d'activité et justement, nous sommes, on va dire, l'interlocuteur principal du secteur privé vis-à-vis de l'État. Et Madame Yao, qui était tout à l'heure sur la scène, est également membre de la Confédération générale des entreprises de Côte d'Ivoire. Quel est notre rôle ou bien relativement à ce sujet? On a deux leviers. Nous avons deux leviers par lesquels, on va dire, on peut ou on a essayé jusqu'à aujourd'hui à impacter sur la question du genre au niveau des politiques. Le premier, comme je pense que tout le monde le fait aujourd'hui, c'est le plaidoyer. Et pour ça, je tiens à remercier également l'initiative parce que nous avons, dans le cadre de l'initiative, sollicité une étude dans le sens d'avoir une confirmation par rapport à ce que nous avons observé déjà sur le terrain en termes de représentativité des femmes dans le secteur industriel. Juste un petit, je vais dire une petite parenthèse pour vous donner quelques chiffres. Au niveau des entreprises du secteur privé, le constat est qu'on a une entreprise sur 5 qui est dirigée par les femmes. On a une forte concentration des femmes dans le secteur des commerces, contrairement à l'industrie où on n'a pas beaucoup de femmes. Et lorsque nous avons des femmes dans ce secteur-là, elles sont plus, on va dire, au début de la chaîne, donc au niveau de la production et au niveau de la distribution. Donc on a, sur toutes les parties où on peut avoir une valeur ajoutée plus importante, on n'a pas assez de femmes. Donc tout ce qui peut influencer sur les revenus supplémentaires qu'elles peuvent avoir, sur les gains qu'elles peuvent avoir pour justement quitter d'une situation de pauvreté ou bien d'une situation où elles ont un revenu plus faible à un revenu plus élevé, et on n'observe pas véritablement beaucoup de femmes dans cette partie de la chaîne de valeur. Donc pour nous, en réalisant une étude pour avoir de la représentativité dans le secteur de l'industrie, ce sont des éléments qui vont venir nous servir pour le plaidoyer que nous menons déjà, de façon générale, mais en particulier pour le secteur industriel, étant donné que nous, on a proposé à l'État une feuille de route en ce qui concerne la transformation structurelle de notre pays, en mettant bien sûr l'accent sur l'industrie. Et justement, le gouvernement a, on va dire, adhéré à cette feuille de route en l'intégrant dans la stratégie nationale de développement. Et donc, notre transformation structurelle est basée sur l'industrie et bien sûr avec le déploiement de 7 clusters industriels. Et lorsqu'on préparait encore, on va dire, ce panel, je venais en sachant que on n'avait pas dans nos politiques industrielles intégré véritablement la notion de genre à l'intérieur, mais juste avant, je veux dire, juste après, quelques jours avant de venir ici, on a eu la présentation du ministère du Commerce justement qui est en charge des questions d'industrialisation, qui porte la question des clusters, qui a mentionné aujourd'hui la question du genre. C'est-à-dire que toutes les actions qui seront menées dans cette politique industrielle devra adresser la problématique du genre en intégrant en moyenne 30% des entreprises qui bénéficieront des accompagnements, que ce soit en termes d'aspects techniques, en termes de financement, en termes de propriété. Il fallait que ces entreprises-là soient détenues par des femmes. Je veux dire, ça c'est une nouveauté que nous n'avons pas auparavant. Donc là, il y a une amélioration par rapport à cette question. Le deuxième élément, c'est que pour le moment, on va continuer au plaidoyer parce que la notion de genre, comme je voulais dire, on a dit le critère principal, c'était 30% des entreprises détenues par des femmes. On peut avoir une entreprise qui est détenue par une femme, mais à l'intérieur, on n'a pas de femmes, c'est-à-dire qu'ils sont employés. Est-ce qu'on a résolu la question de la représentativité de la femme? Est-ce qu'on a résolu, comme le panel précédent qui montrait l'importance de prendre la femme dans son entièreté, dans son apport, on va dire, à la création de richesse au niveau national? Pas vraiment. Donc, il y a encore des actions à mener justement pour qu'au niveau des critères même qui permettent d'évaluer la question du genre dans nos différentes politiques, on puisse avoir d'autres critères qui permettent d'avoir un engagement plus important et plus significatif. Une autre chose sur laquelle je voudrais terminer, c'est notre initiative en notre sein. Pour nous, avoir plus de femmes également signifie qu'on donne plus d'opportunités aux entreprises qui sont créées par des femmes. Et donc pour cela, nous, on a une initiative qu'on a débutée depuis 9 ans. On sera à la 10e année en 2024. Cette initiative a pour objectif justement de favoriser, de sensibiliser à l'entrepreneuriat et puis d'accompagner, on va dire, les entreprises pour justement avoir des champions nationaux sur la durée. Et au début, lorsque nous débutions ce programme, la participation des entreprises portées par des femmes était aux environs de 16%. Aujourd'hui, je veux dire, l'édition dernière, c'est-à-dire 2023, on est autour d'une quarantaine de pourcents de participation d'entreprises détenues par des femmes. Donc, on a fait des progrès. Et pour cette année et les années à venir, on a, nous, en notre sein, on va dire, initié d'autres critères, notamment la création d'emplois. Et on voudrait aller, on va dire, à 50% déjà de participation des dossiers que nous allons accompagner devront être portés par des femmes. Et en termes de création, cette fois-ci, c'est un nouveau critère que nous avons, que nous voulons initier. C'est-à-dire, il faudrait également qu'on ait de la création d'emplois pour les femmes, de sorte à ce que justement on ait un impact plus significatif. Donc, ce sont ces deux leviers aujourd'hui que nous utilisons. Et nous allons, dans le cadre du programme mené par l'État au niveau politique industrielle, comme je vous le disais, le suivre très précisément pour que les différents éléments de décaissement des bailleurs pour l'appui de ce programme-là puissent être véritablement suivis, de sorte à ce qu'on puisse avoir cet impact significatif sur l'inclusion des femmes dans la politique industrielle. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levy. Extremely interesting. And it's always, I mean, it really gratifies you to see how many progress everyone is doing, and especially how it is at the center of the agenda. No? Sometimes you can move faster, sometimes you can move slower, but there's clearly a willingness to continue pushing, which I think is the right thing. No? One thing I was looking at the data when I was preparing this panel, and that caught my attention was that looking at Europe, Mr. Levy asked me to present a bit the European case, and how when the industry in Europe was a lot about textile, there were many women in the industry, but then as it moved to a more technological industry, the number of women participating really stopped. Why? Because we were not investing in parallel in what is called STEAM, no? Science, technological, math. And I think this is something that can be a lesson learned, no? For everyone, that if you want to make a more smooth transition and not kind of a wave, no? You have to, while you're including more women in the industrial sector, you also have to be working in parallel, creating those capacities. So when that industrial sector evolves to a more technological industrial sector, it's capable to continue absorbing women. No? But a lot of this is about policies, about incentives, about how to create the conditions for private sector to work. And that's where I would like to give the floor to Mr. Bala. As representative of the Ministry of Industry in Nigeria, and I would love to hear a bit his experience and how he, from the ministry side, how they are trying to engage actors, women and business organizations to build the industrial policy, and how they've done it, and how do they think it should be done also to be more effective. Mr. Bala, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Miguel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, like rightly said, my name is Mohammed Bala, Director, Industrial Development Department, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. Yeah, in developing our industrial policy as a ministry, we have that overriding supremacy to look at the entire industrial policy of the country. While looking at that, we take note of the fundamental disparity between women and men. And in doing that, we're able to come up with gender-sensitive industrial policies. And what do we do? Because right from the initiation stage, we factors all the relevant stakeholders that are involved, both the private, civil society groups, and the government agencies. They're all factored into the development of those policies. In the course of doing that, we now look at what are the high job given sectors in the development of those policies. You find out sectors like on the light manufacturing side, agro-allied industries that are largely populated by women are given priority in the development of this policy. That's why you see government coming in to do a lot of interventions. And during these interventions, we have like providing common facility centers for women in their community, reaching them at the community. And in doing that, we involve right from the leadership of that community are carried along in doing this. So women are largely involved in the development of our industrial policy. Very gender sensitive, because we know what's economic empowerment. If you empower a woman, what it means in the increase of your GDP and the sustainability of even the family and the economy. So our policies are very, very gender sensitive, and we involve what we call implementing agencies, because we develop policies. And as a ministry, we have agencies that are in the investment climate, those that in the financing, those that provide even technology, training aspect. We all have different agencies that really come together to see how they can promote this economic development in the country. And in doing that as a government, we factor area of interventions, like we said in for instance, just to Bank of Industry. So what do? We encourage them to have a gender desk to prioritize women empowerment. And in doing that, you see any intervention that comes in specific portion. The last was 75%. You see, it will be targeted for women, because they are at the micro level, micro, small, and medium enterprises, which account for about 70% of the economic development of the country. So specifically, we intervene as a policymakers to see that women are highly, highly empowered. And yes, the platform is for everybody, inclusivity is there. But while we're doing that, we also set target to say, okay, give certain percentage to women so that they are well carried along. Like I said, we know the disparity, we know the weakness that we have, but that is not an issue per se, but we are moving forward, and women are highly, highly empowered from our industrial policy and as a ministry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Extremely important, and I see that one of the things that I was saying at the beginning, you are already doing in Nigeria about coordinating different departments, different units to make sure there is, and also the target issue, no? And you're absolutely right. I think there's a session, I don't know if it's the one in parallel or this afternoon, there's a session on precisely that, no? How important it is to have the data, to have targets, to have indicators that can be measured, can be used to follow up the strategy and then adjust the strategy to make sure that we reach the goals, no? But, I would like to now change a bit to the industrial policy and what it tends to do. More industrial policies and strategies have an objective, to do with the green transformation, to promote more jobs, but it's not often that we see industrial strategies having women economic empowerment as one of the main goals. It's more of a kind of cross-cutting issue that more or less effectively is put in place, but not as a target in itself. When one could think that in some cases it could be included as one of the targets of the policy, of the industrial strategy policy. So I would like to now pass the floor to Ms. Sinkose from Eswatini, because they recently designed a new industrial policy with the support of ICR, with the ICR team. And we would like to know a bit, Mrs. Sinkose, a bit, how did the government include the woman economic empowerment element in the process? What was the thinking and what was the result? And how do you see it moving forward in terms of implementation?
Thank you so much, Miguel, for the opportunity, and good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, especially in Rwanda, where we're discussing these issues, and Rwanda remains a good example for the whole African continent and the world at large on how we can improve gender equality and narrow the gender gap. So I would just like to state that we received assistance from the GIZ in collaboration with the SADC Secretariat to use the EQUIP methodology, which is a tool that was designed by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, in collaboration with GIZ to help developing countries to design evidence-based policy, industrial policies, and also using a participatory approach, which is what we did. And we started off by the first phase of the policy-making process was to equip government officers in our department to build capacity on conducting industrial diagnostics using evidence and data from our Central Statistics Office, as well as internationally available data to just try and understand where we are as a country in order to develop the intended interventions in our policy design. And this was very, very useful. And it helped us to really come up with targeted interventions and even think of introducing new policy instruments in our new industrial policy. And one of the steps that we did with the guidance of also ICR through Stefan as our project assistant manager while we are conducting the second phase of the industrial policy development was to do a very hands-on approach whereby we did a very systematic development of the policy, in that we started with the inception reports, where we called on the relevant stakeholders, and women were heavily involved in this process. We had to ensure that women, various women empowerment groups were part of that. And also we would, for each stage of the policy development, from identifying the objectives to identifying intervention areas and even to the discussion of the potential instruments, women were involved in that process, from having consultations and also validating at each stage of that process. So that was very helpful for us. And it helped us to really identify the problem areas in our economy. For instance, we've talked about the issue of the manufacturing sector being mostly made up of women. It's the case in Eswatini as well. We have the clothing and textile sector, which largely employs women. It's women-dominated sector in Eswatini. It's good for employment, it's good for economic growth, but on the other side, you find that the wages that these women are getting from this employment are very low. So we want to change that with this new policy. We want to try to develop the value chain so that we have women being involved in the upper end of the value chain, so that they get better wages and we reduce that wage gap and narrow the gender gap, and ultimately achieve economic and social development.
Thank you very much, Nkosi. And indeed, I think involving women throughout the process of designing a policy, it's key. But also we see there another challenge, which is how much women can be represented through organizations, the level of representation, and how inclusive those organizations are in terms of really representing the voice of the different segments of the economy. And in this regard, I would like to go back to Mr. Bala and ask a bit. In the case of Nigeria, we heard a bit how the strategy is very looking closely at all these aspects, and how working from different agencies and different areas of the government. But we would like to also understand a bit how was the consultation process, if there was any, with women business organizations or other type of organizations, and if there was, how was it, and if there wasn't, why do you think it wasn't, and how do you see this conversation with those kind of actors?
Thank you, Mr. Mujal. Like Elias said, women economic empowerment is very, very strategic in our development of industrial policy. We work with all relevant MDS ministries, department and agencies in developing these policies, and we carried everybody along to really reach where we can develop for economic industrial sustainability. We have programs that we collaborate with agencies just to showcase as model for coming up entrepreneurs to take charge. For instance, like in the automotive industry, the areas where you see is largely men-dominated areas. We give women that platform to also go into it to compete with men, and they are well supported into it. Initiative like what you call Lady Mechanic Initiative. These are sectors you hardly see women going into as mechanics into it. You see initiatives like where you see women going into the furniture sector industry. So we specifically targeted this type of areas so that women can also go into it. We showcase them as role models, and traditionally they go into areas where you hardly see women into it. So as a strategic policy from the in industry side, we always encourage women to go into these particular areas, and we support them. Support coming with all the generic issues you know about. Is it financing? Is it marketing? To the extent we even showcase their products internationally, just with our agencies. They support them with all the necessary ingredients they need to travel and to showcase their things. We do that just to support women, like in the garmenting industry. All their products are well packaged, supported, and those that are doing very well are like role models, and people see them to say, yes, if so person can do this, why can't I also go into it? So that disparity is well taken care of. Are we there? No, but you could see we are progressing by the day to have that inclusivity and not to disadvantage women, as it were, in the development of our policies. We have other initiative that you could see we are targeting women. Agro-processing, the packaging aspect of some of this, because our policy is diversification of, away from, Nigeria is an oil and gas really dominant industry, but we're diversifying this sector into other areas. So in doing that, we add value to our natural endowments, those areas that, we are very good at. Like, you see, cassava, Nigeria is one of the highest, if not number one, in producing cassava in the country. But what do we do with this? We're not adding value, as it were. We're just exporting the products. No, but when you go into it to produce starch, methanol, active pharmaceutical ingredient, these are areas where we now deploy women to really participate into it, and they'll add a lot of value into it. So these are the strategies we are doing as a ministry. Ministry, we don't really go down interfacing with most of these agencies. What we do is we support. Who do we support? We support agencies. We work with private sectors that are like-minded and other development partners. We work together with them. We give them that government support while they implement all these initiatives that we really promote as a ministry. That's what we do, and really we are progressing by the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pala. Very interesting. Of course, what you were describing, then you have to think about other challenges about how women that are trying to progress in those sectors that are being strategic can access financial support, which is a huge challenge we know in Sub-Saharan Africa and in the Caribbean and Pacific. So indeed, but by already putting it as a policy priority and already trying to connect those women businesses with markets, it's already a very, very good step in the right direction, I think. So, but I would like to go back now to our representatives of the private sector, because we one of your roles is to advocate, to advocate with the government for when there's discussions on industrial policy reforms, to make sure that certain elements are included in the agenda. And of course, one of those elements, it's how we make those strategies more gender inclusive. What is your experience from that point of view? Have you had any successful stories to share with us of having been successful in promoting this kind of advocacy with the government? How do you make sure that your organizations they integrate the different segments in a way that when you share your voice with the government, it's a voice that represents a majority of stakeholders, but specifically women stakeholders. No? So if you can share with us a bit your experience, so we can start with Mrs. Sankalova maybe, and then I'll give the floor to Mr. Levy.
Thank you very much for that question. I think first let me applaud Nigeria and Eswatini on the good work that you are doing on your side. Here with me from Ministry of Trade and Industry representative. I hope I will represent her well because we are partners in crime. I think that is the approach that we have adopted in Botswana, to partner with government. You know, as you critique government, also be the solution that you want to give the government. That is the approach that we have taken on in Botswana. And of course, in addition to the success story of the school uniform or of textile, where there's many women in that particular sector, there's many others, the informal sector. We have many vendors who are women, multiple of them, who in most cases, they were forced to cross borders to go and get their vegetables, to go and get that from the neighboring countries. And they were exposed to so much danger. And then we sat down with the government, with other associations, of course. What can be done? Another ban on importation of vegetables. And this was to encourage, on horticulture, this was to encourage value chain development. I think you spoke about it earlier. As much as there's many women in that space, this will now go all the way to touch other sectors, your finance sector, because now we are sure of the domestic market. Therefore now the bank can have some kind of confidence in saying, I am sure you can get a session from a particular retail store, therefore I can put my money in your business. And this in some way has kind of freed a little bit of the access to funding challenge that women had in that particular space. And they are now able not only to grow products, but they are also now can go into the packaging. You know, that's the value chain development part of it. They can also touch in other areas where they never touched, because now they have the market. They can access finance. Now they can think about what else can we do? Instead of buying plastic, can I find a way to reach out to Sasol, get the material, raw material, and produce plastic myself? Or can I, you know, the logistics part of it. Now we have the logistics also being part of the value chain within the agriculture sector. And it's not all of us who can drive tractors. There's men also who are also part of the value chain that has been created simply by offering these women an opportunity to grow, to capacitate them. So it's just one of those things that we have managed to do. And for the informal sector, there is incentives. You talked about incentives earlier. There's incentives that are mainly for the informal sector, and this is where women are. We call it chema chema. In my country, chema chema means run as fast as you can. So there is money that is secured. It's easy accessible through the development banks in Botswana. Women can now easily come up with their, you know, the simplest business plan that they can have and access that fund. And therefore now they can be able to accelerate whatever they are doing within their businesses. So it's quite encouraging for them. But one of the challenges that we have, I think it has been mentioned twice by Nigeria, the word encouragement. Unfortunately, as much as we encourage women, we even take this encouragement to replace it with areas where we should be touching on policy. You know, we would come with initiatives that are more temporary. Some of them will call them directives. They are not punitive. If you have not facilitated that woman the way that directive is saying you should, no one will take you to court for that. You will not be held accountable for that. So I think in most cases, the unfortunate thing that our governments do is to replace policies that are implementable with encouragement. You can't just encourage. It's not everybody that is there in them to, you know, want to encourage. There has to be a policy that is implementable. And the other thing, again, of having policies, there is beautiful policies, but we lack implementation. And the reason why we lack implementation is because we don't harmonize. There will be one ministry that is responsible for gender issues. There will be one ministry that is responsible for trade for women. But where is the Ministry of Lands? How accessible is land for women? Have we called them into this conversation where we can align and harmonize policies such that as trade is fighting for women in trade, as gender is also fighting for women to trade better, are we also fighting for women to access land? Are we also fighting for women to access finance? And these are conversations that they need everybody, all hands on deck. And unfortunately, with the structures that exist in our systems, we don't have that. And the other one would be culture. As we reform our policies for women, we forget the biggest element of culture, of societal expectations. And we women, we are under a lot of, I'll speak as a woman now. There is so much pressure from the society, from the cultures that we come from, that as we reform our policies, we forget that there's the cultural aspect of things. Can we not reform cultures if we must, just so that women can also have it easier as the other gender? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ankolova, we could do a whole panel on what you just said, because there are so many things there on societal changes and cultural norms. There's an expression in Spanish, I don't know if it translates in English, but it says that the paper holds everything, meaning that you can write as many regulations as you want, but that's not the issue. The issue is how you implement those regulations, how you have the capacities within the organization to implement them, and the political willingness. And sometimes we lose ourselves in obsessing with having a policy or a regulation, which is good and is necessary, but it's not enough. We need to do much more than that. That's only like the starting point and not the end point. No? But Mr. Levy, if you could share a bit your experiences from your organization in the same line, please.
J'avais commencé déjà à aborder cette question dans ma réponse précédente. Juste rappeler un élément avant de poursuivre sur la question, c'est que au niveau de la prise en compte, je vais dire, des questions de genre, comment on arrive aujourd'hui, nous, en tant que confédération, justement, à saisir ces questions ou à entendre les voix des femmes. Il faut dire qu'au sein même de notre confédération, au niveau du conseil d'administration, les choses ont évolué. Déjà en termes de représentativité, où on a un leadership qui s'est affirmé davantage avec une participation plus importante des femmes. Donc cela fait que déjà à ce niveau-là, la question des femmes devient centrale pour les sujets qui sont portés par la Confédération. Et les femmes qui sont présentes dans ce conseil d'administration, ce sont des chefs d'entreprise, et donc qui ont au quotidien, on va dire, des challenges de chefs d'entreprise qui comprennent la dimension de l'entreprise et bien sûr les contraintes en tant que femmes qu'elles peuvent avoir dans leur entreprise. Et j'en veux pour preuve même que Madame Yao, qui est présente ici, fait partie du conseil d'administration. Donc justement, leur, on va dire, interaction avec d'autres femmes, d'autres associations ou avec d'autres entreprises, fait qu'on a une remontée d'informations, déjà sur les problématiques au quotidien. Et dans notre, on va dire, dans notre quotidien de travail, on rencontre des entreprises, on a l'opportunité d'échanger, de travailler sur les problématiques qu'elles rencontrent. Donc déjà, sur ce premier point, on arrive à avoir l'information et bien sûr à apporter le plaidoyer. Et notre action sur le plaidoyer est très importante et se décline sur différents aspects. L'avantage que nous avons, c'est que nous avons différents interlocuteurs. Nous avons l'État, nous avons le secteur privé même, nous avons également les partenaires techniques au financement, tous les partenaires au développement. Ce qui fait que pour les différentes perspectives que nous pouvons avoir, nous avons un discours vis-à-vis de ces différents interlocuteurs-là. Lorsque je prends, tout à l'heure vous l'avez mentionné dans votre propos, à un moment donné de l'industrie européenne, on avait une représentativité importante des femmes dans le secteur industriel, mais plus on avançait et cette tendance a baissé. Et justement, pour nous, la question de l'éducation est centrale. Comment on arrive à faire en sorte que les jeunes filles aient accès à l'éducation, à une éducation de qualité, et surtout vers des formations scientifiques qui leur permettent justement d'avoir des opportunités dans l'industrie, dans l'ingénierie et dans d'autres, comment on va dire ça, corps de métier qui permettent d'embrasser l'industrie correctement. Donc nous, au sein de notre organisation, on mène des travaux justement sur la réforme de l'enseignement supérieur, sur les curricula, de sorte à ce que ces besoins-là soient pris en compte. Donc, il y a cet aspect-là qui est porté par le plaidoyer que nous faisons. Un autre aspect est justement que, tout à l'heure, ma collègue du panel a eu à le signifier, les questions de foncier. On a des difficultés sur la question foncière de façon très pratique, parce qu'après, les zones industrielles, pour qu'on puisse justement les développer, il faut que la terre soit disponible, il faut qu'il n'y ait pas de conflit sur ces propriétés terriennes. Et donc, malheureusement, ce sont des questions qui ne sont pas encore résolues, mais pour lesquelles on continue de porter les plaidoyers pour dire qu'on ne peut pas prétendre à l'industrialisation si justement on n'a pas une réponse appropriée à ces questions-là. Et vis-à-vis des partenaires techniques et développement, la question du genre revient de plus en plus. Et surtout, on sait comment on va dire ça, la place centrale que la femme occupe dans notre société, l'impact qu'elle peut avoir en termes de catalyseur sur la création de richesses. Et dans toutes les différentes conversations, dans tous les programmes aujourd'hui, la question du genre est sur la table. Donc, notre travail aujourd'hui est vraiment de porter ce plaidoyer-là, de continuer à le faire sur les différents aspects, de sorte à ce qu'on puisse arriver à des, comment on va dire ça, à des résultats concrets. Pour terminer, le dernier élément, comme je vous l'ai dit, notre politique industrielle qui vient d'être mise en place, auparavant, on avait des programmes ponctuels et bien sûr qui accompagnaient les femmes dans des secteurs particuliers pour justement quitter de la production, bien pour réussir à donner un peu plus de valeur à leur production initiale. Mais encore, je veux dire, c'était limité dans le temps et ce n'était pas des programmes structurants véritablement. Donc, c'était plus des appuis ponctuels. Il y avait bien sûr de l'appui technique et après, il y avait du financement. Mais encore, il y avait d'autres aspects d'accès au marché qui n'étaient pas véritablement adressés. La question de l'industrialisation vraiment, parce qu'après, on peut donner de l'équipement à des femmes pour qu'elles puissent améliorer, on va dire, la valeur ajoutée. Mais par contre, ce à quoi on ne pense pas lorsqu'on fait ces programmes, la plupart du temps, c'est qu'il faut avoir accès au marché. Quand elles n'ont pas accès au marché, elles n'ont pas de moyens pour pouvoir justement continuer à maintenir cet équipement ou peut-être pour produire plus, acheter des équipements différents. Donc, on se retrouve dans ces programmes où, à un moment donné, les machines tombent en panne. On n'arrive pas à assurer la maintenance. On n'arrive pas à renouveler comment on va dire ça, l'outil de production. Et finalement, l'initiative ou bien le programme qui devait contribuer significativement à l'amélioration de la qualité de vie de ces femmes-là s'arrête à un moment donné. Et donc, la valeur ajoutée qui était recherchée, elle a été gagnée peut-être 1 ou 2 années, mais après, dans le temps, on n'a plus de résultats escomptés. Donc, on espère bien avec cette nouvelle politique industrielle que les choses se feront plus structurellement dans les différentes, on va dire quoi, dans les différents critères qui sont proposés dans cette politique-là. Il n'y a que les besoins spécifiques aux femmes doivent être pris en compte en ce qui concerne les zones industrielles. Donc ça, pour nous, déjà, c'est un indicateur intéressant qu'on devra surveiller, voir comment on l'évalue dans le temps, comment on arrive à faire de la sensibilisation dessus, comment on arrive à intégrer justement avec les femmes, comment on va dire ça, les détentrices d'entreprise, comment ces éléments-là, les problématiques particulières qu'elles peuvent avoir. On connaît les questions liées, on va dire, aux crèches, on connaît les questions liées aux cantines, à la disponibilité également. Je veux dire, on peut avoir comment on va dire ça, des usines où il n'y a pas de toilettes, alors que c'est pas seulement un sexe qui est comme on appelle ça, qui opère dans cet environnement-là. Il y a des femmes qui évoluent dans cet environnement. Donc, comment on arrive à prendre toutes ces différentes questions culturelles et tout, de sorte à ce que véritablement, sur la durée, ça ne soit pas des actions ponctuelles, mais qui ont une transformation significative pour nos différentes économies. Donc, pour nous, aujourd'hui, véritablement, on est heureux que la question du genre devienne centrale dans la politique industrielle. On a, comme je viens de le signifier, on a quelques indicateurs clés qui ont été identifiés. On va contribuer justement à l'appropriation de ces critères-là et à travailler de sorte à ce qu'on puisse avoir comment on va dire, des résultats concrets sur le temps. Voilà.
Absolutely. Another great intervention that would allow us to have another panel of so many things you've said. But I'll just add one small thing, that for me, I work a lot on access to finance for MSMEs. And for me, it's always fascinating. And I've had this discussion with a lot of commercial banks in Sub-Saharan Africa. Because on the one hand, you have hundreds, literally hundreds of studies that say women are better repayers of loans than men. This has been, I mean, there's literature, hundreds. But then when you go and talk to bankers and providers of finance, they say, oh, but, you know, we perceive women as more risky. And then you say, well, how is that? I mean, if it has been proved over and over that they repay better, and if you go to your accounts and you look at your own experience, you'll see that they repay better. How can they be perceived as more risky? And there's a simple answer to that. It's social bias. It's not factual. It's not based on facts. It's not based on numbers. It's not based on business. It's basically there's a bias, and those are very difficult to change. But until we change those, the other elements that we're trying to support through all these different actions will have really positive impact, but not as much as we would know. But I'm gonna now jump the script because we have another question. But I think I prefer to give the floor to the audience to see if there are any questions. See if we can have a bit of a conversation. If there is not, if people are shy, I still have a couple of questions here I can pose my panel. But because we wanted to make it a bit more interactive, let me open the floor. If there's any question from anyone in the audience that would like to take the floor and ask our panelists, please don't be shy. Yes, we have one question over there. Oh, 2, 3, great. That, yeah, 4, 5, a lot. Great, that's what we wanted. So please.
Thank you very much. I am Bami, Joseph Sise from Sierra Leone. I want to say a big thank you to the panelists for insightful information regarding the topic being discussed. I have a question for the representative from Cote d'Ivoire. I see you provided a lot of insightful information with regards businesses and companies. From a general perspective, I would like to know whether there are any framework, as in accountability framework, to companies or businesses you mentioned to hold them accountable for their actions and ensure gender equality and economic empowerment goals are being met effectively. Thank you very much.
So I suggest we take 2 or 3 questions and then I give you the floor. So there was one over there and then one here and you're the fourth. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Wali from the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I think during the conversation, especially the host, lead panelist, highlighted something important. I mean, I think you presented something about the statistics wherein in the textile industry, wherein women used to participate, but when there were some updates, technological updates, you've seen some drop in terms of participation. So gets me thinking again, the aspect of digitization. Do you think that this could be a barrier for most women? I mean, with the advent of COVID, we've seen new ways of doing business. We've seen new business opportunities being introduced on how to do business online, e-commerce platforms, etc., etc. But I think some of our women, especially the older one, I think it's much more easier based on what I've seen with the younger women. But I think it's become more difficult for the older women who are used to doing things the traditional way. So do you think digitization could be an issue? And how can we overcome such issue? How can we make it easier for women? Currently in our country, we're thinking of transforming our procurement processes to an online system, to have it online where everybody could participate, both genders. And at the same time, us as a Chamber of Commerce, we're also looking at moving our trade fair processes online in terms of the application, online payment. But from our conversations with some of the women, they are beginning to fear that whether if such happens, if such transformation happens, whether they'll still be able to participate effectively as expected. So I see that as some form of challenge and maybe a little bit of barrier for them. So I would just like to hear the thoughts, your thoughts based on the panel on this. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Korir from the National Treasury Republic of Kenya. Just to appreciate the panelists for their deep insights in this field of industrial policies. My thinking is that male dominance in the industrial or manufacturing sectors over the last century or so was likely informed by the manual nature of our operations and, of course, the cultural norms of the society. Now, with the emergence of artificial intelligence, with the emergence of robotics in the manufacturing sectors, what preparations and policy interventions are we putting in place or contemplating putting in place to ensure that women take their rightful positions in the emerging dispensation? Thank you.
One last one here.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je suis Madame Lemami Elsi du Bureau régional de renforcement des capacités de l'Organisation mondiale des douanes à Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Alors, j'ai deux questions. La première est aux panélistes du Botswana. Alors, quelles sont les politiques qui sont mises en œuvre pour protéger les femmes aux frontières, donc les commerçantes? Quelles sont les politiques justement qui sont mises en place? Nous savons qu'il y a beaucoup d'harcèlement sexuel aux frontières. Donc, quelles sont les politiques qui sont mises en œuvre? Et une autre question pour Monsieur Lévy. Vous avez dit que 1/5 des entreprises sont tenues par les femmes. Je n'ai pas bien compris. Tenues, c'est quoi? Est-ce que c'est
chef d'entreprise?
Oui, chef
dirigé par les femmes.
Dirigé par les femmes, donc chef d'entreprise.
Oui.
Okay. Voilà. Je voulais juste un petit éclaircissement. Donc, merci les panélistes pour le partage d'expérience. Merci beaucoup.
What I would suggest is that we start with the first question to you, then maybe Ms. Ankaloba can answer her question, and then we go around because the other two questions are for all of us, I think. So, Mr. Levy, if you can start, please.
Merci pour la question. En réalité, on n'a pas véritablement de cadre normatif qui oblige, je parle ici du secteur privé en particulier. Après, il y a bien sûr au niveau de l'État des dispositions pour la représentativité au niveau de l'Assemblée nationale et tout ce qui est de l'administration. Pour le secteur privé, c'est plus du leadership. Lorsque je prends la Confédération générale des entreprises, les présidents qui se sont succédés ont eu cette volonté justement de prendre, on va dire à part le corps, la question du genre lors de leurs différents mandats. Et donc, la première action, bien les actions, on va dire directes qui pouvaient être faites, c'était justement de contribuer, on va dire, à une reconfiguration du conseil d'administration pour arriver justement à avoir une meilleure représentativité et une meilleure évolution au niveau des administrateurs dans ce conseil d'administration-là. Et même, on va dire, cela c'est ressenti aussi dans toute l'organisation même de l'organisation. Parce que vous avez, pour des commissions techniques pour lesquelles on mène des réflexions, on a des présidents de commissions qui sont de plus en plus de femmes, alors qu'auparavant, c'était, on va dire, des rôles qui étaient dévolus totalement aux hommes. Donc, lorsque vous prenez également les différentes organisations patronales dans différents secteurs d'activité, on a de plus en plus de femmes qui interviennent au niveau des différentes directions opérationnelles. Par contre, aujourd'hui, ce que nous essayons de faire, ou bien on fait beaucoup de tâtonnements, il faudrait le reconnaître. On se donne des objectifs, on essaie de les atteindre, et au fur et à mesure, on essaie de voir comment on améliore les scores qu'on a pu obtenir sur les différentes actions qu'on a menées. C'est l'exemple que je peux donner sur notre programme d'accompagnement. Au départ, on était autour de moins de 16%. Aujourd'hui, on a 40%. Aujourd'hui, on se fixe comme objectif de passer à 50%. C'est un challenge, mais on croit que c'est possible de le faire parce qu'après, il y a beaucoup de sensibilisation pour que justement, on brise les barrières sociales pour que les femmes qui veulent entreprendre, qui ont des idées, qui veulent aussi progresser dans la chaîne de valeur. Parce que n'oublions, on observe beaucoup qu'on est toujours soit au niveau de l'agriculture, au niveau de la fourniture, de l'approvisionnement, ou au niveau de la distribution à la fin de la chaîne. Mais comment on arrive à donner plus de valeur à nos différents produits? Donc, comment on arrive à faire en sorte que les entreprises qui sont dirigées par les femmes arrivent à passer à l'échelle? Parce que même au niveau de l'industrie, lorsque vous les voyez dans les secteurs, par exemple, du cosmétique ou de l'agro, on a des petites unités industrielles, mais pas, on va dire, ces unités industrielles significatives qui produisent à l'échelle et qui exportent avec des volumes plus importants. Donc, c'est un objectif qu'on se donne. Et justement, le fait de participer à ce type de forum, pour nous, notre objectif, en tout cas très affiché, c'était de pouvoir s'enrichir de l'expérience des expériences, de sorte à voir qu'est-ce qu'on met dans notre plaidoyer, comment on va dire ça, comment on le mène, de sorte à ce qu'on puisse avoir véritablement une feuille de route assez claire pour nos actions à venir dans les années à venir. Donc c'est un peu la démarche aujourd'hui dans laquelle nous sommes, et on s'enrichit très bien de ce qu'on entend aujourd'hui, et puis bien sûr avec l'étude que nous sommes en train de mener qui est appuyée par la facilité sur la représentativité des femmes au niveau de l'industrie. C'est ce que je pourrais dire par rapport à cette question.
Thank you very much, Ma, for your question. In Botswana, there's a couple of interventions that have been put in place. I think one of them I did mention earlier on the statutory instruments that have been put in place, especially on the horticulture product side, because a lot of movements for women in the informal sector, especially across the border, were mainly to go and buy the horticulture products from the neighboring countries. Therefore, there has been now an instrument in place that says no importation of such. And while at that, government has also provided them with incentives so that while they don't go to buy, they can produce themselves. I think I did mention earlier, one of the incentives that are very recent is called Chema Chema, where there is seamless access to that fund. It may not be lots and lots of money, but it's money that they can do to produce some of the stuff themselves. And the other one is there is an intervention on allowing production in homes. When you have space, you are now allowed, policy permits that you can produce behind, we call it backyard garden. This has now allowed women to utilize spaces in their homes to produce and sell. So instead of them going out there to buy, they can produce. We also have the most recent incentive, it's called Temolekloto. It provides both incentives in money, financial support, and also the seeds and all other things that they need for them to be able to produce their own horticulture products with ease. So there is a couple of interventions that have been put in place to allow for that. And again, in Botswana, we haven't really had like rape cases across borders because they are very tightly close together. I think the one that has been really an issue was the time delayed at the borders, which of course it gets late, but you still worry about your safety. But we haven't really registered cases of rape that happen between the borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to now give the microphone to both Mr. Bala and Mrs. Nkonse for the question related to how, as industrialization is more technological and there's more robotics, how your policies or your government is looking at the policies, industrial policies, and to adapt to this new situation. So, Mrs. Nkonse, please.
Okay, thank you, Miguel. I'll respond to that question by saying that I believe that governments have to be deliberate about this. They have to put their money where the mouth is so that we don't miss out on this emergence of the artificial intelligence. And also, I believe we need to be more proactive in putting up affirmative action to ensure that women are not left out. For instance, by the developing policies of ensuring that women are encouraged to study and we develop the STEM so that there is more participation of women in these sectors of science and technology and engineering, so that women, the perpetuation of gender inequality does not get worsened by the emergence of AI. I believe governments really have to be intentional about this and deliberate, because if nothing is done, then clearly women will be worse off.
Thank you very much. Yeah, digitalization or Internet of Things, as mentioned by the colleague, this has come to stay. We have no option but to wake up and to act accordingly. In doing that, we have to have a multifaceted approach, both from the policy framework and then the practical implementation level. Just sharing the sentiment of my colleagues from the private sector, when you engage deeply with the private sector, like you see pressure group coming from the manufacturing side, or chambers of commerce, industry, trade, and investment, you have no option that, because this affects both the gender, not that it affects only the female. So we have to invest heavily in ICT. We have to invest heavily. And luckily, from the Nigerian side, I think women are doing very well, especially the e-commerce aspect of it. They are doing very well. So we just have to wake up and to look into this. Just to share an experience, what we did during the COVID, when it came, the whole world woke up to see that, look, medicaments has become an issue. What do? You have to wake up and now develop your own natural resources, so that at least you can mitigate and then address those things. So that makes us to come up with health industry framework, because we import a lot of active pharmaceutical ingredients, realizing that, look, we have what it takes to produce this as a country. So we now went into this so that we can not also face another pandemic, sorry to say, because I don't think people will survive such things. We are looking. So that is it, is for us to realize that we need to invest, is the investment aspect. And thank God, like I said, we have agencies that are looking at all these cross-cutting issues, from the financing, investment, climate, technology, infrastructure. We have them in our policy development, and we engage heavily. These are the right way for us to really go into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just to add that, I fully agree with the question about the risk of digitalization. Digitalization has been perceived as a tool to have a more inclusive approach, bringing, for example, connecting with rural communities. But at the same time, I fully agree with you that there's a danger of, if we move too fast, we are, by including some segments of society, but we are excluding other segments of society. And I think the only way forward, and this is happening also in Europe, a lot of people who are relatively older, they're really struggling because a lot of services nowadays are only digital, and they cannot manage, and they're being left behind in many ways. So I think we have to be very careful with that, and I do think we have to find a balance, and maybe it's costly, but over some period of time we have to keep both the traditional and the digital formula, because if not, what we will be doing is solving one problem but creating another one. So I think I fully agree with you. No? But I think we're on time. We have to conclude, but I would like to give the floor to the four of you in case you have one last remark before we close the panel that you want to share with the audience. And if not, we can conclude the session. But we can start with Mr. Levy. Anything, last words you want to share with the audience?
Je pense que, merci Miguel, déjà la chose qui est très importante, c'est que le premier panel l'a mentionné, le fait que la question du genre est urgente dans la mesure où l'impact est très important pour nos sociétés, aussi bien économiquement parlant que de façon générale pour la sécurité et pour la paix, de façon générale. Donc à partir de ce moment, je pense que le partage d'expériences doit être très important aujourd'hui, en tout cas pour ces questions-là, étant donné qu'on a les femmes partout, mais comme vous l'avez mentionné également dès le départ, des nations avancent relativement plus vite que d'autres, et donc réussir à mettre à disposition ce partage d'expériences pour qu'on s'enrichisse, et surtout pour qu'on essaie de voir chez nous comment on améliore les choses et qu'on ne laisse personne derrière. Donc ça, je pense que c'est l'objet de ce type de rencontre et qu'on devrait multiplier et surtout multiplier les livrables aussi. Parce qu'à la fin de la journée, comment ces livrables sont utilisés de sorte à ce que aussi bien le secteur privé que le secteur public, on arrive à s'approprier. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, de façon très pratique, le gouvernement ne peut pas tout faire. Il est vrai que ce n'est pas forcément le rôle du secteur privé d'avoir certaines initiatives, mais par contre, le fait de regarder dans la même direction, les choses peuvent être facilitées. Et il peut y avoir de l'amélioration en ayant des initiatives différentes pour soutenir justement ce que l'État fait et avoir un impact significatif. Donc pour cela, il faudrait continuer à avoir un regard dans la même direction pour avoir plus d'impact.
Thank you very much, Miguel. I think mine is very short. I want to thank you first for this great initiative. You did say you birthed it 70 years ago or something? Yes, thank you very much. And also I want to appreciate the men in the room and also the men outside this room who believe in women, who have committed themselves to supporting women and actually do the best they can to ensure that women show up and they succeed in whatever endeavors that they engage in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. For me, I want to emphasize that at no point should we think we've done enough in terms of capacity building on issues of gender mainstreaming. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to have capacity from the grassroots all the way to the top, because we can empower women at the grassroots, but if at the decision level, women voices are still missing, then we won't achieve much. I've experienced people asking, why would you even think about talking about women empowerment in industrial policy? Because they traditionally believe that that belongs to a specific department that is responsible for gender issues. So I think we just need to come out of this and say we still have a long way to go, and we should at no point think that we have arrived, because there's still more that needs to be done.
Thank you very much. I think the take home here, what we need to do is to institutionalize gender mainstreaming in whatever we're doing, and to really work along with the private sector to see that, look, those areas that are hindrance to the development of the women empowerment are addressed. Looking at capacity building, very, very key, and it's only when you interface with the private sector, those that are on ground, they'll be able to really support what's there. This type of platform, as we're here, is one of the enablers that really will really put us all together. We share experiences, we benchmark one another, and a very veritable platform you have really provided. I think we should continue to commend you, and to see after this we continue the engagement, so that at least we can make the atmosphere better for everybody. And we need to also take note that women empowerment, what it takes in the sustainable development of an economy, that is very, very key, and we need to emphasize that and to give it that needed priority. One of the panelists mentioned that we are 300 years behind. But yes, we are not there. But I think we're on track, and with the support we are getting from our international partners, development partners, I think we can fast track reaching that our milestone. And that is what I felt we should continue, and we get there. Thank you.
Well, a big applause to our panelists, please. They've done a great job. And with this, we can conclude this panel. But please, as we said at the beginning, this event is not about panels. Panels is to give these super interesting experiences, but it's also about connecting now in the different fora and continue the conversation bilaterally or in groups. So thank you very much, and have a great day. I know.
2. 1, 2. Wonderful. And can we appreciate the panel and the moderator for a great job? Well done. And I want to believe that we've done a very good job in time management. That was really well done. Our next item on the agenda is LUNCH, lunch. And I want to remind us that it is served at the tent. And so when we get out, we'll go downstairs, and we have a team that can also help you to reach the place. And while there, please make sure that you eat everything. Okay? It's delicious. It's been prayed for. Now, we will do at least 1 hour, 30 minutes, and we come back for the next session. And that session will be tackling the care economy, from duty to opportunity for women's economic empowerment. That's the subject matter that we'll be tackling. And we are going to be honored by the presence of the Technical Vice Minister of Women's Affairs, Government of the Dominican Republic. She's going to be part of this particular session. It would be great to hear the insights coming out of there. So without further ado, I want to welcome all of us. Unless if there's any other announcement, happy to pick it. Yeah.
Hi, as you're ready to go for lunch, those who don't know me yet, my name is Nadine. I was in contact with the funded participants, at least by email. My office is over there where it says admin room, where Leo is standing in front of right at the moment. So those who have not yet dropped me their receipts for any additional travel expenses like transport in home country or visa fee or something similar, please come and see me during the day, because I need to make the calculations, and the conference ends already tomorrow. So, and we have some 90 people, so it's not done in 2 minutes. I just want to make sure that you all get your money before you go back home. And and also if you have any questions regarding changes in flight times or stuff like that, we also have plenty of that this time. I don't know why. Please come and see me. And those who told me yesterday or the day before that they have no additional receipts, their money should be ready after or shortly before the lunch break ends, so you can come and see me to collect it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Very important announcement there. Thank you. All right, so I'll release all of us for lunch. Enjoy your lunch and again, eat everything. Thank you.